In Hollow Knight, we play as the Knight, a character who will eventually become able to save Hallownest and carry out that deed one way or another. One could say that they were somehow meant to do so. But here's the thing, what if they actually were? What if the Knight being a sort of chosen one and the subject of a prophecy is actually meant to be a part of the game's lore? I was originally going to discuss this subject as an add-on to a different video, but I thought it deserved its own, so here we go. The biggest hint of a prophecy being in effect comes from the Seer. She mentions that her tribe dreamed of the arrival of the one who was destined to wield the dream nail. The Moth tribe did have significant abilities related to dreams, so it isn't hard to imagine that some amount of fortune-telling would be among them. Additionally, they got these abilities from their creator, the Radiance, a higher being. The Pale King, who was also a higher being, did have some ability of foresight, so such abilities could exist among other higher beings and be passed down to the life forms they created and their descendants. In the case of such a prophecy, one has to wonder how detailed it was. The only thing known for sure is that it was about a forthcoming wielder of the Dream Nail who would be aided in some way by the Moth tribe. Being the last of her kind by the time the Knight returns to Hallownest, the Seer ultimately fills this role. But what the Knight ends up doing with the Dream Nail is defeat the Radiance in some way, either by containing or destroying her, and she was of course the Moth tribe's creator. It seems unlikely that such specificity was part of the prophecy though, as the Seer says herself that what the Knight will do with the Dream Nail is ultimately their decision alone. The Seer repeatedly mentions the guilt of her tribe for having forgotten their creator and subsequently the infection, so if the Seer had any suspicion that the Knight was going to defeat that being, she may as well help not only because she is meant to according to the prophecy, but because her tribe's actions helped bring about the Radiance's wrath upon Hallownest to begin with. One significant aspect of this prophecy is that it could explain a game mechanic that is particularly perplexing to those of us seeking to interpret the lore, the death and respawn mechanic. According to my theory, the Knight is meant to do something important to save Hallownest, and therefore their fate is such that it will happen no matter what. Even if they die before they achieve this, they will come back as themselves as many times as needed. It is only once they have achieved this in the Dream No More ending that they die, or at least shed their shell, permanently. Steel Soul playthroughs might take place in a reality where there is no prophecy, or it just doesn't allow the Knight to respawn upon death. The respawning would happen through the actions or allowances of some outside force, separate from any higher being in the game, the force of destiny itself. It also explains not only the Knight respawning period, but the fact that they do and none of the other vessels do. Only they are the chosen one. If this prophecy is at play, it may or may not involve certain details of the Knight's journey, such as the fact that they return to Hallownest sometime after its initial fall. If that's the case, it may have been part of the prophecy that Hallownest would fall to the infection and come back together once the infection was eliminated. The kingdom was meant to have its initial time and then fall, and then be rebuilt in some capacity after it was saved. I also believe that in Silksong, Hornet may be, or at least perceived to be, the subject of a similar prophecy. I think this is even more likely the case than it is for the Knight in the first game. The pilgrims who bring Hornet to Farloom seem to be targeting her specifically. Hornet is a unique being, born of a worm and a spider queen and raised by the weavers who are likely from Farloom. The pilgrims may believe that Hornet is the subject of a prophecy that mentions that she or a being who fits her description is meant to do something in Farloom, and they see it as their duty to aid in bringing it to completion. So what do you think? Do you agree with my speculations? Is this theory enough to explain the night respawning upon death? Let me know in the comments. Thank you for watching this video. Please consider checking out my channel and subscribing if you enjoy the content. I hope you're doing well, and I'll see you next time.